gallery. I appreciate you waiting just there. Again, I'd like to extend a welcome to you all to discuss the incinerator part this evening. I'm sure most of you are here to hear that. I just want to let you know that this is really an information evening, so both sides will be heard this evening. This isn't where we make decisions. The community board is merely gathering information, passing that on so we can all understand it, the pros and cons, and we will be presenting, pulling together a submission. So you are all welcome to make a submission yourself. So just to be crystal clear, we're not actually making a decision on this evening, okay? I'd also like to just invite Wayne Allen, Group Manager, District Growth and Regulatory Services, up just to explain the process a bit more, so we all understand what's coming up over the next couple of weeks.
Right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to you and to the board members. I'll try and speak up because there's quite a few people here. And good evening to the members of the public here as well. So my name's Wayne Allen. I'm a Group Manager here at Waipa District Council and responsible for Growth and Regulatory Services. So I'm just here just to talk a little bit about the process, and particularly for those who want to lodge submissions on this proposal. I'm not here to talk about the merits of the application. So just going over the application, Global Contracting Solutions, they lodged a resource consent application with Waipa District Council in December 2021. So it's taken a fair while to go through the process to this point. The process, so the proposal is to build a waste to energy plant located at 401 Racecourse Road, Te Awamutu. The proposed plant will incinerate 150,000 tonnes of rubbish annually, which will be used to generate electric power. Council sought further information on a range of issues, including acoustics, transportation movements, impacts on local roads, water infrastructure, stormwater overflow, and others. Council is, and I'll make this point pretty clearly, Council is legally obliged under the Resource Management Act to process the application and subsequent legislation. So by law, we cannot simply say no, and conversely, we can't simply say yes to the proposal. We have to go through a process. What we did say, however, in September 2022, was that the application must be publicly notified, specifically to ensure any member of the public or organisations could have a say by making submissions for and against the proposal. And we urge you to do that, as the Chair has just mentioned. And so can the board. They can lodge a submission to the proposal as well. The applicant initially requested a non-notified consent process. The Waikato Regional Council, remembering this is applications both to Waipa District Council and Waikato Regional Council, also concurred that the applications lodged to them would require public notification for the processing of their resource consent applications. And they have applications for discharge to air, discharge to stormwater, deposition of clean film. The applicant accepted the public notification process and advised the councils to proceed with it, and that's what we're doing. So submissions are currently open and close on Friday, 13 October. There you go. Just a reminder, as there are two consent authorities, Waipa and Waikato Regional Council involved, if you are going to lodge submissions, be sure to lodge your submissions on the appropriate authorities that you're lodging your submissions on. So, for example, if you're lodging submissions on discharge to air, make sure you send your submission to the Regional Council. We have, as from Waipa's perspective, we posted out about 400 letters to residents and businesses in the vicinity of Racecourse Road advising the application in the 4-week submission process. There's been public notice in the local paper about it as well. And in terms of the hearing and determining of the application and submissions lodged, I want to be clear about this. It's independent hearing commissioners that will be accredited resource management decision makers. They will be used, and a panel will be established jointly with the Waikato Regional Council. So there's only going to be one hearings process for efficiency purposes. They will be the decision makers. The councillors, Waipa district councillors, and also the board members are not the decision makers in this application. Neither are Waipa district council staff processing the application. It's being processed by an independent planner. They will be assisting with reporting to the hearings panel on submissions that have been made, the application, and the merits of the application. Council has provided a lot of information on its website, so I do urge you to go and have a look if you haven't already. There is a link on the front page of the council website which says waste to energy plant. That will take you straight through to the entire application, submission forms, links to a series of frequently asked questions. So we've done some Q&As there, so help guide you. We've also had 3 media releases for this proposal since its inception as well. You can even type in 401 Racecourse Road into the Google search bar, and that'll give you the link to the website information. If anybody needs any assistance in how to lodge a submission, please contact our council's planning team. So that's probably it, Mr. Chair, from me. As I say, it's just on the process side of things.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll try and now access Professor Paul Connett, who's streaming in from the UK, I believe.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Doesn't seem to be working there, Professor, but what I have got, and I've got the okay to do this, is to actually read your presentation here. So, and then we can look at how we can get some questions answered or those sorts of things. So, yeah, disappointing for everyone. But I'm now going to read this presentation that Professor Paul Connett was going to be giving. Now I'm going to read it word for word. It's not my words. It's Professor Paul Connett's here. So it's a shame that he wasn't able to do it. Okay, so presentation to Te Awamutu Kihikihi Community Board, meeting 27 September. Why incineration is a very bad and risky idea for your community. My name is Professor Paul Connett. I'm retired Professor of Chemistry, specialising in environmental chemistry and toxicology. I've been researching the issue of waste management since 1985. I have given over 2,500 public presentations in a total of 70 countries. I have helped citizens prevent the building of between 300 to 400 trash incinerators worldwide. I would like to share my knowledge on this matter with this community in several ways. 1, I will be providing the Council with 2 PowerPoints, one giving the detailed arguments against incineration and the other providing information on an alternative zero waste strategy. 2, I will be producing a written critique of the proposal by October 13th. And 3, if provided the opportunity, I would also like to present via Zoom a 90-minute presentation to the public, as well as a more specialised talk for the farming community on the dangers incineration poses to agriculture, particularly to those producing grazing animals. From an environmental and health perspective, the burning of waste is a highly complicated and risky business. A modern incinerator converts hundreds of tonnes of waste per day to trillions of extremely tiny particles, which are very difficult to capture. The particles are so small that they can carry toxins across lung membranes into the bloodstream and into every tissue in the body. These nanoparticle emissions are not regulated or monitored. There is no question that the air emission control equipment on incineration has improved since 1985, especially in Germany. However, this improvement has come at a price. A, it has made incineration extremely expensive. Over half the capital costs of a modern incinerator goes into the APC, making incineration the most expensive way of handling waste and the most expensive way of making electricity. And B, the residues in the APC are very, very toxic. In most European countries, the fly ash is treated as hazardous waste. In Germany, it is put in nylon bags and deposited in salt mines. Ash disposal could be a much greater problem than global metal solutions admit. Over the last few years, monitoring of chicken eggs produced near the most advanced incinerator in the Netherlands has shown dioxin emissions have exceeded the most stringent standards. In most countries, the monitoring of incinerators has been grossly inadequate. In my view, the use of the term waste to energy is a massive deception of the public. Incinerators are actually waste of energy facilities because they do not recover the embedded energy in commercial products and materials. That is the amount of energy used in extraction, manufacture and transport. Compare thus to a zero waste where reuse, recycling and composting does reduce energy used in subsequent production cycles. In my view, this project has the potential of being a disaster to the taxpayer. There are only two ways an incinerator can make money: A, with the sale of energy as electricity and waste heat, and B, a tipping fee. With a tipping fee, this is what customers, local communities will be charged for every tonne of waste they deliver to the facility. There are very examples of where incinerators make a profit from energy sales, so the burden of paying off the capital investment for this facility will fall on the tipping fee, i.e. the taxpayers. These facilities produce very little energy for the investment involved. This 400-tonne burner would yield the same amount of energy as 2 to 4 wind turbines. Finally, even if you made incineration safe, you would not make it sensible. The task of handling waste has changed dramatically from the 20th to the 21st century. In the 20th century, the task was seen as finding ways of getting rid of waste safely and efficiently. In the 21st century, the task has become how to handle our discarded resources in ways we can share some, if not all, of the value with the future. In other words, our task is not to get better at destroying waste, but to stop making products and packaging that has to be destroyed. We have to say to industry, we can't reuse, recycle it or compost it, you shouldn't be making it. Waste is a design problem. We need better industrial design for the 21st century. That is what the Zero Waste program is all about. That is the future. Incineration belongs in the past. 1 minute ago. Incineration is not sustainable. It cannot be part of a circular economy. Professor Paul Connor, PhD, right in the UK. Okay, so it's a shame that Professor can't answer any questions, but I'm sure the Community Board can liaise with questions that we gather this evening. So thank you very much, Professor, and apologies for that technical glitch. Okay, I'd now like to call up, we're not sure exactly, Brenda McIver or Rosalie Copeland. Okay, sorry to hear that. Right, we'll move on then to the Waipa Thermal Energy Conversion Facility, point 5 of the agenda. I'd like to ask Mr. Roger Wilson if he'd like to present, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Community Board members and public. Thank you for the opportunity for Waipa to present our proposal to the local community. The Waipa project is something we've been working on for some time, which I think has been touched on with our consent first being lodged in December 2021. What I wanted to start is using probably 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, talking about the benefits of Waipa to the community. And I think we start with this in the waste hierarchy. So when we look at the waste hierarchy, we agree that there's a whole lot of design process that needs to go on to reduce waste. And Global Metal Solutions as a business operates in the recycle and material recovery space. We operate scrap yards across Auckland, Hamilton and New Plymouth. And so we're fully involved in extracting recyclable material from scrap that comes through our yards, finding markets for it so that it re-enters the production cycle. What we do have, and every waste company has, is a volume of waste that is not recyclable. And that waste falls into the bottom 2 levels around residuals management and essentially unacceptable waste. And those are the items of waste that we're looking at for Haiwera to provide a home for, other than going to landfill, which we don't consider as a long-term solution to protect the land and the whenua of New Zealand. We should be doing something different with those waste items. So that was the first part. I want to, I guess, outline the place of Global Metal Solutions and the role that Haiwera or Global Contracting Solutions will play in the waste hierarchy. With waste in New Zealand, and I've pulled a table here of data that was produced from Business Desk in August of this year, an article that's indicated that from information that's available, there's about 6 million tonnes of waste generated in New Zealand. And of that, about 5.1 million tonnes ends up in landfill every single year. So of that 5.1 million tonnes, our Haiwera project is designed to process 150,000 tonnes, which is around about 3% of New Zealand's total waste. And when you think about where we live, from Taupo through to north of Auckland, probably over half of New Zealand's population lives in that region, and there's a significant volume of waste generated in that area. The next point I want to talk about is the economic benefits. Our project's going to create, we expect 60 full-time roles once the project is up and running. So those roles will be mechanical engineers, technicians, so they're going to be high-value, well-paid roles for the community. There will also be labouring roles, IT roles, and every year, each of our combustion units will require a 7-week, or a 5-week shutdown. So that'll be a total of 15 weeks across the 3 units, where the unit will be shut down. Local engineering and services businesses will be providing services and economic activity into the Te Awamutu region. Those shutdowns are scheduled. They require replacement parts and things like that to ensure the ongoing operation of the plant. The next item I want to highlight is about the full circle recycling. We are designed, and right from the start, we've designed into our process a walkway and education facility so that we have the opportunity to educate the youth of today on how recycling works. Recycling is not as easy as perceived to be. There's a number of dynamics involved in that. And so with our education facility, we'll be able to complete some education, help the youth of today understand what is recyclable, what is contaminated material, and therefore not recyclable. So that's been built in right from the start. The next 2 items were around the preservation and the improvement of the Manapiko stream. Our plant does adjoin the Manapiko stream. As part of the realignment of titles, there will be a 20-metre esplanade, which will be, and the low-lying area around our plant will be planted on wetlands and native trees so that we can improve the environment and help protect the Manapiko stream as well. The adjacency of our plant to the Naroto to Te Awamutu cycleway will also mean that we'll be able to create a spur to the coffee shop, which will provide a start point or a destination for people on that cycleway, grab a coffee, recharge their bikes, whatever they wish to do while they're enjoying that cycleway, which will be built in the future, as I understand. So they're the 5 key talking points. I figured there would probably be lots of questions, so I want to leave plenty of time to take questions, because that's probably the best way to satisfy and help share the information that people have. So from here on, look, happy to take some questions.
Great,
for the remaining time.
Thank you, Roger. Any questions? Sally?
I'll push the buzzer first. The biggest question I've been hearing is, why Te Awamutu?
Yeah. So as a business, we looked at a number of locations this is all covered in the consent application. We looked at a number of locations where we could place this plant. It comes down to roading access for waste. It comes down to population. We have yards in Papakura, Hamilton and New Plymouth, so there's kind of an adjacency for those locations that it's easy to transport waste to Te Awamutu. And we came down to 2 options that we're balancing. And quite honestly, the tipping point in the decision, one of the key tipping points was that Craig Tuhura, who's the founder and project owner of this project, mana whenua back to Ngāti Apakura. Craig wanted to make a difference and produce something and bring employment and improvements to his people, Ngāti Apakura, and that became a key point for Craig and his passion for Te Awamutu.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I leave the community board can ask questions, okay? Thank you for that. So just a quick question, have you built this, one of these incinerators before?
We haven't, however, we're using technology from Germany, which is the latest technology that's available, and obviously the previous professor touched on some of the improvements that are coming from German technology.
Yeah, that's okay, that's all good, that's good. Just I'll open up to the community board. Jill?
I believe you need water 24/7, is that right, to be operating?
So the plant will use, and there's some technical data, I recall it's 70 cubic meters of water per day, 70,000 litres per day of fresh water will go into the plant. That will be boiled to generate and create steam and create energy, and then that fresh water will be then disposed of off-site.
Te Awamutu in the last 20 years has had a real struggle with having a good water supply, and in the last year we have a good water supply. Is that going to take away for all our residents?
I'm not able to answer that question. I guess I consider that to be an item that the Waikato District Council, through the consent process, will resolve.
Thanks for that.
Just one more quick question.
Yep.
Why, and this is asking on behalf of a lot of people, why in the town rather than out of the town? Is that because of the water supply?
When we're looking at our locations, if we chose a rural area for the plant, we would then have had to work through a process of rezoning rural land to industrial land. This site is dairy industrial zoned, so it's already intended to have some industrial activity on it. Also, if we elected a rural property for this plant, we would then be converting high value, highly productive rural land into industrial land. And that's a whole nother conversation suite, which we didn't think was appropriate for this project. We felt that an existing dairy industrial zone land-use property was the appropriate place.
Thank you, Roger. So just one more for me before I go to John. So the professor said that nanoparticle emissions are not regulated or monitored. How are you going to manage the nanoparticles?
So the plant will emit at low levels of a particular matter, and there's a national environment standard on air quality that New Zealand operates under. Just specifically the nanoparticles. The nanoparticles, so the air dispersal fields have been assessed by scientists, and they've been peer reviewed. And the conclusions of the scientists and the peer reviews are that the dispersal fields comply with the National Environment Standard on air quality. Yeah, so specifically then the nanoparticles, is that a part of that? I believe so, yes. That's highly technical, which that's cool. So it's probably PhDs behind those guys' names. Yeah, cool. So we'll check that. John, sorry. John? Sorry, can you just, please. John, can you ask a question? Quickly.
Are there any long-term benefits from the plant further down the track?
So the outputs of our plant will be electricity. There will also be hot water and steam. So there are a number of future potentials with the hot water and the steam. So for example, should Te Awamutu Racecourse become a residential zone, we will be able to work with the developers and develop a community hot water heating plan through there. And that's what happens in European cities, is that the hot water from these plants are then reticulated through cities to provide heating and other benefits like that. The steam is something else another resource which we will get an opportunity to work with. Lou?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was quite interested in your response about the water. So the water goes through the plant, but it cannot be recycled. It's not recovered within the site. The water is then exited and taken off-site.
So the water that goes through the boiler units will be taken off-site. The reason for that is that, and there's technical stuff which is a little bit, when you boil your jug, you get a calcification level around the jug. So once the water is boiled, it's decalcified, I think is the term, and that is not able to be managed easily by the Te Awamutu waste system. So therefore, we need to take that off-site and dispose of that through another licence process.
Thank you.
First question. The second question is that you have a location that's very close to our local dairy factory,
Yes.
which will have some limitations to discharges there. We're having dealt with that in Hautapu, for example, the recent resource consent. So there would be probably some limitations there, quite stronger than a normal area. So in collecting that site, are you well aware of that?
Yes, we are well aware of that, and Fonterra, as an affected party, has been worked with to review and peer review all of our scientific data, and Fonterra will, they're experts in this space. They will make the decisions that they consider appropriate for their plant.
Thank you. Final question from me. How can you said yourself that it's not as easy as recycling is not as easy as it's made out to be, right? How can you ensure that all of the heavy metals are going to be removed before it's incinerated? And will you monitor for PFOs, mercury, dioxins and lead?
So the intention, the consent includes we're going to place 24/7 monitoring on the emissions so that we're continually monitoring those emissions that they comply and have mitigants in place should they get out of kilter.
So I guess, sorry, this is the first part of that question is how are you going to ensure the heavy metals are removed from all of the recycling? So that, for example, so if you remove all of the heavy metals, the mercury, the batteries and lithium, etc., PFOs, polyfluorinated organisms, etc., if you remove all of that and you burn that, I can see that's one thing. But if you've got things that in the with the burning material, and by your own admission it's not as easy as it's made out to be, you're going to be burning some of this toxic material.
So prior to the waste bunkers, there will be a complete recycling facility in front of that, which will have magnets, optical sorters, picking stations, where the waste will be broken up and then separated to capture those items you're talking about. And that's where we'll also extract the clean cardboards, the ferrous metals and the non-ferrous metals and the like that is fully recyclable. We also have proposed very strict protocols around what is acceptable and what will be rejected prior to going through our plant. And that's part of the team that we'll have on the ground in the waste recycling hole, sorting, separating and rejecting, grading.
So it's a final question. So you can't be 100% certain, though, can you? Like there's going to be a manual process in the picking and like it's a manual process, right? So you can't be 100% certain. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can never achieve 100% certainty.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you for, sorry, last question, Lou.
Last question, no problem. Just one last question. I noticed that you're a 24-hour operation, so therefore you'll have to have on site a significant amount of product or waste product being stored. In that storage process, is there some, circular motion where that will not be left for lengthy periods of time? So we've got the storage facility not having large amounts of your product or the product waste product sitting for extended periods of time in one location. And do you have storage sheds or are they being stored outside?
So the complete facility is indoors. And so from the recycling facility through to the waste bunkers, which will have shut off doors, that will restrict any odours extracting from there. There's also when one of these combustion units is operating, it creates a negative pressure oxygen situation because you need oxygen to create fire. And so that addresses the odour escaping to a large degree. When it comes to a breakdown or a shutdown or an outage or something like that, the bunkers will limit the amount of waste that we're able to store, and we will essentially stop taking deliveries or divert those deliveries to other locations during those periods of time. We're extremely mindful of odour, which is why we will be rejecting food and putrescible wastes on the way through.
Final question, because it just came to me in terms of the residents. I think I read there were 25 trailer trucks per day that we were estimating.
Yes.
So I'm expecting this incinerator to gobble up as much as rubbish as it can take, so it's 24/7. What's the maximum number of trucks that can be expected? If 25 is sort of the average,
So our consent is asking for 185 vehicles per day in total. So there's okay. There's 25 trucks. There's 60 staff.
Yep.
So there's 60 vehicles coming from staff, and then there's another number of vehicles which are 2- and 4-wheel vehicles delivering waste, and public as well have the opportunity to deliver waste. So that's a total. It's a total of 185 vehicles per day. We know from Waipa District Council information that at the moment on Racecourse Road, there's 1,380 vehicles per day use that road.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, no, we have to. Very quick question, sorry.
Impact assessment report. So that's from a member of the public?
Not certain that's required under the consent at this time. We've worked through all of the requirements of the consent and haven't been required to produce one of those reports.
Okay, thank you. John, just very quickly.
Can you just clarify your traffic movements, like truck, 10 cars?
Sure. So traffic movements, our consent is for 1,360 traffic movements, which is different to 1,380 vehicles that use Racecourse Road. When a large truck goes up Racecourse Road, it's counted as 10 movements. When it goes the other way, when it exits the site, it's another 10 movements. So every large truck is counted as 20 transport movements. So when we do our transport movement count, those 25 trucks are recognised as 500 of the 1,000 transport movements. So it sounds worse than it actually is, and that's understanding the traffic here.
Okay, thank you very much, Roger. Appreciate your time tonight for coming along. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, now let's call on Sue Coots. Thanks very much. So you've got 10 minutes, including questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me along tonight to talk a little bit about the issues associated with incinerators and the idea that there's lots of practical alternatives to disposal. I'm Sue Coots, as you've said, and I have 25 years experience in resource recovery, established and run resource recovery centres around the country, and also been part of lots of national working groups on waste and resource recovery issues. So I have a bit of knowledge in this space, and I'm here tonight to speak for Zero Waste Network. We have 75 resource recovery sites that are community owned and operated around the country.
Sorry, hang on a second. Can we just ask the planner to... Thank you.
Okay, is that any better? Okay, yeah. Okay, and our 75 organisations around the country are organisations a bit like Extreme Zero Waste that you may know out at Raglan. Collectively, we employ about 1,400 people, turnover about 91 million, and we put through about 230,000 tonnes a year of recycling and organic material. So, a lot of small organisations around the country, working in small towns, still managing to recover and divert a lot of material. Extreme Zero Waste diverts 75% of everything that comes through the door there. So that's, if you think about this incinerator proposal, they're saying 480 tonnes a day, recover 80 tonnes a day, you're looking maybe 20%. It's actually possible to divert much more than that if you use good processes for sorting and separating. The organisation that I used to run in Wanaka, it's a town of about 12,000 people, very similar to here, and we used to employ 50 people and turn over $3 million a year. So it's possible to have small community organisations running these facilities that can really divert a lot of material. Waiuku Zero Waste grew out of the local men's shed, and I heard someone speaking earlier, Richard, about the men's shed, a lot of social and environmental benefits associated with working with local community enterprises to grow something out of that can actually have a lot of really great spin-offs for your community. So we're seeing a lot of these incinerator proposals starting to pop up. We've had a lot of our members, a lot of councils come to us and say, can you help us make sense of them? As you know, they're massive, documents with a lot of information in them. And the main thing that I would say, you know, I'm not going to break down every detail of the proposal, but just a few high-level things I'll bring to light. You know, that the company's proposals tend to overstate the benefits and understate the risks. You know, it's basically a sales pitch for the company, so you can understand that you need to really do a bit of digging to find your way through that. You know, I guess the first page of the proposal tonight is, you know, a thermal energy conversion facility is another name for a rubbish incinerator. And so, you know, you have to work your way through these documents, and really it takes a bit of time and energy to think through all of the different implications. You know, the company's documents are not an independent assessment of the costs and risks and impacts of these proposals on your community. And, you know, it's really important that you understand that you don't take them as, you know, gospel, and you think it through. If you think, you know, generally the benefits of these proposals accrue to the company, and the costs and risks accrue to the community and the environment. And it's really, you know, as the community board, it's your job to get a feel for what's a good fit for your community. You know where you're heading, you know what your community is looking to achieve over the next 20 years. And it's really important that when you're putting together your submission, you focus on what's most important to the people here in this place. You know, obviously you've got impacts around primary production that Paul Conrad alluded to, and also the well-being of your people is a critical thing to think about. What stood out for us, and, you know, we just have a checklist when we look through these applications, we're going, have they covered off this, have they covered off that? And, you know, I'd say that the impacts on the local environment and the health impacts are two big gaps that you really need to find a way of filling that hole for yourself, so that you can feel reassured that you understand the implications. You know, the proposal really presents the option that you guys have as either or. Are we going to burn it? Are we going to bury it? And what I'd say is that, you know, that they're both the same thing. They're both disposal options. We're moving away, as Paul Conrad said, we're moving away. The world is moving away from disposal. We're going up the hierarchy. We're starting to think, how do we not make all this rubbish in the first place? How do we strip it out as we go along? And when you think about burning mixed rubbish, you know, you had a question about, you know, how can you get out the harmful things before it goes into the fire? You can't. Plastic, which goes through, you know, a big proportion of the material going through these things is plastic. 10,000 different chemicals involved in the production of plastic. When you burn those in an incinerator, some of them do disappear, but a lot of them recombine, and you end up with a lot of other complicated issues associated with the chemicals that come out of that. A lot of dioxin, you know, dioxin-like substances, which all of us know are problematic. Now you hear that the emissions are very low on a perfect day, and there's not anyone who's ever run a big machine or, you know, processing facility will know there's not that many perfect days. You know, you don't always have the ideal circumstances for your product to flow through, and we know that even the best of these facilities are emitting dioxin. It's landing in the local environment.
Just past 5 minutes, just so if you have more questions.
That's
cool. Free to carry on.
Yeah, I've just got a couple more points. Yeah, so these facilities are not sustainable waste management strategies in the European Union. They've decided that incinerators are not considered to be suitable for public finance. They're not subsidising them. They see them because they undermine. They've been excluded from the things that you can consider to be economic, you know, sustainable economic development, because they're inefficient use of resources. Denmark's often been used as a poster child for incineration, but they're moving away from incineration. They're saying if you haven't gone there already, then you should really jump straight to recycling. And the last thing really to keep in mind is that you know, this plant is going to create energy, but it's not going to be renewable energy. It's energy that's based on burning fossil fuels and plastics. And so you need to remember that, you know, most of the energy that's going to be generated through this process is generated from burning oil. So it generates CO2, you're creating an emissions source in your own community. So yeah, happy to answer any questions that you might have. You know, there's a lot of communities around the country who've faced these proposals, and they're working together to really think through the issues. One thing that I would say is that the current regulations and rules are not adequate for managing them. We don't have any of these facilities in New Zealand. In Waimate, there's a big proposal down there, and the local council and the regional council have both asked that the government call those proposals be called in so that they can be considered at the government level, because they don't feel they have the knowledge and expertise to properly assess them or to think it through.
Okay. Well, they've got 3 minutes to go. Thanks very much for your presentation. Any questions?
So it's correct, isn't it? If you burn the plastic, you get toxins in the air, but if you put it into landfill, it remains inert. Is that?
Well, I guess the problem with plastic is it's oil-based. So, plastic is made from oil. If you put that into the landfill, it will sit in the landfill forever, which is not a great outcome, but it's better than burning it to emit, CO2 emissions, which are what's causing climate change. So people are saying that burning plastics, you have two problems. They're made from a lot of chemicals, some of which are problematic, and you end up with those. You end up with those in the fly ash. You end up with those in the scrubbers and all the filters that are in the top, which so that all of that material has to be disposed of in landfill. And you also end up with particulate emissions, as the guy earlier said, which are problematic. Yeah, so you're better off to have it sitting in the landfill and not creating any further risk around climate change.
Thank you. Any other questions? John?
Methane.
Yeah.
It's worse than CO2.
Yeah, methane emissions. You do get methane emissions if you put food waste into landfill, but these guys are not going. They're going to be taking food waste out beforehand, so that there's not going to be any food. They're not going to be avoiding any methane emissions from food waste.
Question here around dioxins. I'm not sure whether you know the answer to this or not, but we're obviously in a dairy farming area. What was the impact, to your knowledge, on dairy cattle with dioxins?
Well, the evidence that we've seen around the world is that dioxins and other related chemicals tend to build up in the food chain. So they will, you have emissions from air, land on the grass, get eaten by the animals. I think Paul Connett was talking about the impact on chickens. They've had very high levels of chemicals showing up in chicken eggs. So the problem with dioxins is that they accumulate in system and they stay in your system. They bioaccumulate, and so go into the cow, go into the milk, go into the butter, go into the product that you're going to sell to your overseas markets. And so there's a lot of risk there. I think that's a really good thing for you guys to do a bit of research into and to think through, because primary production area, it's very important that, that your products are good to go into the market.
Thank you. Any last questions? Final question from me then, just in terms of another resident sort of thing, I was just thinking of 24/7, this incinerator's been proposed to run. In terms of noise, light, those sorts of activities. Are you aware of what's the impact?
Well, I guess I don't specifically understand the implications of an incinerator as close to houses as this one is going to be, but I would say any large industrial facility definitely have issues with noise, and it would be good to explore those and to think it through.
Yeah, it does seem particularly close to residential, is just from looking at the maps and things.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. So really appreciate you coming along and giving another side to this. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a lot of information on the proposal itself and a lot of detail around all of the different ones that we've worked on around the country. So if you guys are interested in knowing anything specific, then feel free to reach out. Yeah, I'm happy to share what we've learned.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.